Hello, and welcome to Cindy's Corner. Today, boys and girls, we're reading Chapter 2 of Charlotte's Web. So if you've got your book, go get it so you can follow along. And to catch up, we have Fern, who saved a little pig. The little pig was born, and it was a runt. It was a little bitty runt. And she told her daddy, no, don't kill it. Would you have killed me if I'd been a runt? No, he said. So they didn't want to. And so now Fern has her own pig. And she has named her little runt pig Wilbur. And she had to go to school. So now she's dreaming about her, thinking about her pig instead of what the teacher's telling her to think about, okay? So that was Chapter 1. Chapter 2, if you haven't heard Chapter 1, you might want to go back and listen to it. Chapter 2 is Wilbur. So go ahead, hit that thumbs up, because I know you're going to like this book. It's a chapter book. We have 22 chapters. It's Charlotte's Web. The author is E.B. White, and the pictures are by Garth Williams. All right, Wilbur, Chapter 2. Fern loved Wilbur more than anything. She loved to stroke him, to feed him, to put him to bed. Every morning, as soon as she got up, she warmed his milk, tied his bib on, and held the bottle for him. Every afternoon, when the school bus stopped in front of her house, she jumped out and ran to the kitchen to fix another bottle for him. She fed him again at supper time and again just before going to bed. Mrs. Arable gave him a feeding around noontime each day when Fern was away in school. Wilbur loved his milk, and he was never happier than when Fern was warming up a bottle for him. He would stand and gaze up at her with adoring eyes. So he's just looking up at her. Can't wait. For the first few days of his life, Wilbur was allowed to live in a box near the stove in the kitchen. Then, when Mrs. Arable complained, he was moved to a bigger box in the woodshed. At 2 weeks of age, he was moved outdoors. It was apple blossom time, and the days were getting warmer. Mr. Arable fixed a small yard, specially for Wilbur, under an apple tree, and gave him a large wooden box full of straw with a doorway cut in it so he could walk in and out as he pleased. "Won't he be cold at night?" asked Fern. "No," said Father. "You watch and see what he does." Carrying a bottle of milk, Fern sat down under the apple tree inside the yard. Wilbur ran to her, and she held the bottle for him while he sucked. When he had finished the last drop, he grunted and walked sleepily into the box. Fern peered through the door. Wilbur was poking the straw with his snout. In a short time, he had dug a tunnel in the straw. He curled into the tunnel and disappeared from sight, completely covered with straw. Fern was enchanted. It relieved her mind to know that her baby would sleep covered up and would stay warm. Every morning after breakfast, Wilbur walked out to the road and Fern and waited with her till the bus came. She would wave goodbye to him, and he would stand and watch the bus until it vanished around a turn. While Fern was at school, Wilbur was shut up inside his yard. But as soon as she got home in the afternoon, she would take him out and he would follow her around the place. If she went into the house, Wilbur went too. If she went upstairs, Wilbur would wait at the bottom step until she came down again. If she took her doll for a walk in a doll carriage, Wilbur followed along. Sometimes on these journeys, Wilbur would get tired and Fern would pick him up and put him in the carriage alongside the doll. Look at him. See him in the carriage with the doll? He liked this. And if he was very tired, he would close his eyes and go to sleep under the doll's blanket. He looked cute when his eyes were closed because his lashes were so long. The doll would close her eyes too, and Fern would wheel the carriage very slowly and smoothly so as not to wake her infants. One warm afternoon, Fern and Avery put on bathing suits and went down to the brook for a swim. Wilbur tagged along at Fern's heels. When she waded into the brook, Wilbur waded in with her. He found the water quite cold, too cold for his liking. So while the children swam and played and splashed water at each other, Wilbur amused himself in the mud along the edge of the brook, where it was warm and moist and delightfully sticky and oozy. Every day was a happy day, and every night was peaceful. Wilbur was what farmers call a spring pig, which simply means that he was born in the springtime. When he was 5 weeks old, Mr. Arable said he was now big enough to sell and would have to be sold. Fern broke down and wept, but her father was firm about it. Wilbur's appetite had increased. He was beginning to eat scraps of food in addition to milk. Mr. Arable was not willing to provide for him any longer. He had already sold Wilbur's 10 brothers and sisters. "He's got to go, Fern," he said. "You have had your fun raising a baby pig, but Wilbur is not a baby any longer, and he has got to be sold." "Call up the Zuckermans," suggested Mrs. Arable to Fern. "Your Uncle Homer sometimes raises a pig, and if Wilbur goes there to live, you can walk down the road and visit him as often as you'd like." "How much money should I ask for him?" Fern wanted to know. "Well," said her father, he's a runt. Tell your Uncle Homer you've got a pig you'll sell for $6, and see what he says. It was soon arranged. Fern phoned and got her Aunt Edith, and her Aunt Edith hollered for Uncle Homer. And Uncle Homer came in from the barn and talked to Fern. When he heard that the price was only $6, he would buy the pig. He said he would buy the pig. Next day, Wilbur was taken from his home under the apple tree and went to live in a manure pile in the cellar of Zuckerman's barn. How do you think Avery's Fern is feeling? Would you have wanted to sell your baby pig? Tell me how you would feel if you had to sell your baby pig. Then tell me how you feel if it was only right down the road and you got to go see it all the time. Would you still sell it? Dad was firm. He eats too much now. They couldn't keep him. How would you feel if you had to sell your baby pig? If you had Wilbur? How could it have changed? Draw me a picture of you and Wilbur. I hope you enjoyed chapter 2 and give it a thumbs up to keep reading, because the next chapter is escape. Escape. So tomorrow we'll read chapter 3. I hope you enjoyed this like I did. And most important, give somebody a hug and tell them you love them. Have a great one.